When you're ready, you can go.
Okay. I call to order the regular Board of Education meeting on Thursday, December 21st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the autumn of the year in the boardroom of Oak Park and River Forest High School, and after a roll call.
Mr. Brisbane.
Here.
Dr. Maharaj. Mr. Arkin.
Here.
Ms. Williams Lee. Here. Dr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Grandhorse.
Here.
Mr. Costi.
Here. I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or the representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Dr. Maharaj. Mr. Arkin.
Yes.
Ms. Williams Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane.
Yes.
Mr. Grandhorse.
Yes.
Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Mr. Costi.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson? Sorry.
He just got summoned to the superintendent. I did. All right. Sorry about that.
Wait. We got this stuff. Yes. Okay. Welcome. We are reconvening open session and resuming with our agenda. Our first segment are the introductory reports. And first in that is our student showcase.
Okay, I believe we have one student showcase tonight, a very special one.
Yes.
That's becoming a bit of an annual tradition here at OPRF. Andy, go ahead and take it away.
All right, tonight we have Ms. Wong representing our environmental club, and she is bringing with her two of our students who recently attended the UN Climate Summit in Dubai, sponsored by It's My Future. So Ms. Wong and Katie, if you would like to come on up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Cindy Wong, sponsor of Environment Club. And I had the pleasure of being in touch with these two ladies while they were at the United Nations Conference in Dubai this past month. And they're here to kind of give you guys their takeaways and calls to action about what they learned. Okay, so this is Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate Wallace. I'm a senior here. Going to COP was really an incredible experience, one I'm not likely to ever forget, and also one that I'm not wanting to take for granted. So Katie and I are here to kind of share a little bit about what we learned and also continue the momentum, bring it back to our community. So I wanted to touch a little bit about the importance of climate education. So COP gathered over 70,000 people from around the world to discuss the climate crisis and consequences and plan of action for the future. And of those people, I think I only met only 3 high school students besides our group. The far college students, I met a few, not a lot. This is inspiring on one hand to see all these adults that are fighting for to prevent consequences that they're not likely to see in their lifetime. But it's also concerning because it's nearing time for our generation to pick up the baton and begin fighting for our future and for the generations to come. And you, as Board of Education, know maybe better than anyone that education is the building block to any success and to any action in the future. And as far as the climate crisis, education functions in the same way. I spoke on a panel at COP about climate literacy and how that leads to climate justice. And following this panel, I had a few very interesting but also eye-opening conversations with people from across the world. One, an advocate from Iran. She discussed how her community is already seeing many of these consequences that we're warning about, that we're worried about, and they don't have the education or the resources to understand why this is happening and to understand what they can do to fix it. And here at Park and River Forest, we're really fortunate that A, we aren't really seeing any of these really dangerous consequences of the climate crisis yet, and B, we do have access to education. It's imperative that all of our students have access to climate change and climate crisis education across grade levels and across disciplines, because this is something that will only continue to impact every single one of our students throughout every aspect of their life in the future. And this school board has already acknowledged the importance of climate crisis education in the new sustainability plan in goal number 2. And I'm just here to urge that this acknowledgement is not forgotten and that the climate crisis remains at the forefront of our discussions and remains at the forefront of our education. Hi, my name is Katie Stab. I'm also a senior here at OPRF. At COP, for me, one of the major outcomes was that nearly 200 countries agreed to transition away from fossil fuels, which is a huge step in the right direction. But they were also unable to commit to phasing out fossil fuels, and all commitments are completely voluntary still. So for me, COP just underscored the importance of local leadership and action, because if governments on the federal or international level cannot commit to a fossil fuel phase out, then we must make change starting at the local level. With OPRF's amazing sustainability plan, we really have a capacity to be a leader and a role model in the transition to clean energy. So I applaud the goals of reaching zero emissions by 2050 and the decisions to have solar, geothermal on site and purchasing wind energy. However, we must act on this ambition because of, I think, the last sustainability scorecard, we are only on track to reduce 29% of emissions by 2050 rather than 100%. So we really must prioritize these renewable energy projects to meet the targets that were set. I believe that we can do it, and if we can be a role model and a template for other districts in Illinois and throughout the country. So despite the high level negotiations that went on at COP, really the best part was just talking to everyday people and hearing what they were doing in their communities. And I'm excited to see what can happen in ours.
May I ask a question? Just a pertinent comment, which is I had the pleasure of seeing these two ladies present on the 6th of December from Dubai with a series of peers from other districts, and they did us proud. You did us very proud as representatives of our school. So thank you for that. There was also reference even in that discussion to our sustainability plan here being used by other districts in the area. So, it's helping others grow. So my question for you is, how are you're both seniors. How is what you've done here impacting your next year and futures? What are you going to be doing?
I think my answer is pretty similar to Pruden's. We're both hoping to continue our advocacy. I think we're both interested in doing engineering. Specifically, I want to do mechanical engineering and work in the energy sector, but obviously, still making moves in the climate battle and trying to work in that way. Yeah, like Kate said, I'm also interested in engineering. Interested in politics, policy, like campaign organizing as well. So. Working on advocacy.
Thank you so much. We'll move to the superintendent announcements.
Yeah, unfortunately, Maren isn't here tonight. She's on her break already, so good for her. So I'll start with my superintendent's report. I have a few bits of information to share. First, at the request of our board president, Mr. Kofsky, I want to officially welcome everybody to the winter solstice here. For the record, the winter solstice officially begins at 9:27 p.m. tonight, something we hope to note mid-meeting as we get there. For the benefit of a public viewing tonight, I also have a quick announcement before I go into the rest of mine. We are not bringing the school calendar to this meeting tonight for a vote. Our admin team is gathering feedback and taking the time it needs to respond to the questions the board asked at the committee of the whole meeting 2 weeks ago. We will be bringing that item back to the board in January after we gather that. I am thrilled, on other topic matters, to announce that our track and field project has officially reached a point of completion that we will and that will allow us to shortly open it to the public. Not only was it done on time, but judging from our unused contingency budget alone, we are under budget by more than $600,000 for the project. Final accounting is underway, and we'll have that later in this coming spring. We have just a couple of punch list items to finish on the new track, and then it will be open for community use beginning on January 8th, the date that our students return from winter break. Community members are welcome to use the track outside of the school day when it's not in use for practices and competitions. Big thank you, of course, to the Park District of Oak Park, whose collaboration was essential to make this project happen. Also want to give a congratulations to the 180 seniors named as state scholars in recognition of their superior academic potential based on a formula using ACT or SAT scores and unweighted grade point averages. Overall, approximately 10% of graduating seniors in Illinois qualify as state scholars compared to nearly 25% of this year's senior houses. Congratulations to seniors Katie Staub and Kay Wells, who were selected to attend the recent UN Climate Summit, or COP28 in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. They were a part of the 7 generations ahead. It's our future delegate, Chicago area high school students who not only attend the summit, but had 3 proposals accepted. So again, congratulations. Also, congratulations to the following speech team members who have taken top awards at recent tournaments: Simone Arbetis, Alex Robinson Bellamy, Anna Bullock, William Coate, Sonia Emerson, Iris Keene, Bella Lubelchik, Alex Medina, Preeti Mirmia, Teddy Nielsen, Mina Allens, Maura Shigaloni, Blessing Simon O'Hea, and Madeline Walski. Congratulations also to our 2023 District 1 Illinois Music Education Association ILMEA awardees. Winning all state selections were Rubio Shaughnessy, Benjamin Drucker, Drew Lingenfelter, Henry Lloyd, Emily Churchhouse, Alejandro Medina, George Marcadesia, and I'm sorry, George, for what I just did your last name, Esme Connor, Clara Franson, Victor Kramer, Ivy Lentz, Callum McAdam, Brett Lindsay, Owen Rutchick, and Trevor Schumann. Composition contest selection winners were Clara Franson, Ben Gaunt, Roy Kerner, and Daniel Petty. Finally, Ada Lowell was selected for the Future Music Educators Seminar. We have a variety of athletic accolades this month as well. Lean Alaraj, a senior on the girls flag football team, won the National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete Award, recognized for her academics, athletics, and community service. Lean is the only female recipient from Chicagoland this year, and only the second in the history of the award. She will receive a scholarship for her chosen university. In addition to Lean and her teammate, Chloe Johnson, are among the top 2% of players in the state named to the first ever girls flag football all-state team. Chloe received the 17th All-State Award, and Lean received an honorable mention. Chloe's varsity soccer made work of history with awards from the Illinois High School Soccer Coaches Association. Senior Easton Bogart won Player of the Year, a first for an OPRF athlete, while Coach Jason Freed earned Coach of the Year accolade, another inaugural achievement for our school. Congratulations to both. In boys water polo, junior Greg Husky was named an outstanding academic All-American, outstanding honors by USA Water Polo. The junior varsity cheerleading team won first place in the large junior varsity division at last weekend's competition at Rockford High School. And finally, we have a number of honors received by adults serving the district. Dr. Laura Fiorenza, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Learning, received the Tech and Learning Innovative Leader Award for Innovative Superintendent at the Midwest Regional Live Summit. Dr. Fiorenza was recognized for creating a podcast, Hear It From a Husband, to showcase the excellent work of OPR's teachers. English teacher Andy Brown received the Dean Team Award for November for being a constant figure in the halls who is always willing to go the extra mile to support students. And finally, English Division Head Erica Eckert was selected once again as a University of Chicago something. It's been deleted from my notes. I cannot complete that sentence, but I'm betting it was really cool.
It was
Can you help?
Outstanding teacher based on student nomination.
A student nomination.
So one of our students would find students to nominate.
And that's why we keep our communications person here. To fill those gaps. Thank you, Karen, so much for that. And that concludes the superintendent announcements.
FOIA requests, please.
We have 7 submitted and 6 resolved.
Thank you very much. And now, for some excitement, we have our employee recognition segment. Today we are pleased to continue our employee recognition program recognition for the 2023-24 school year. This recognition is sponsored by Oak Park Bank, a Wintrust Community Bank. So,
first, we would like to congratulate Rex Lavalle, who was selected as Teacher of the Month. Here are some of the highlights from the nominations received for Rex. Rex Ovalle stands out for his exceptional teaching skills, compassion, and dedication. He consistently goes above and beyond to create a welcoming classroom environment and connect individually with each student. Mr. Ovalle actively seeks feedback to enhance the learning experience and continually improve the classroom environment. Mr. Ovalle is pioneering the first Latinx literature course at OPRF, reflecting his commitment to cultural diversity and inclusion. Congratulations, Rex. Is there anything you would like to say?
Thank you. I suffer tremendously from imposter syndrome. And all my family and friends and colleagues laugh at me for it. And I kind of have to repeatedly remind myself that like imposter syndrome is ultimately just kind of a lie. And since I started working here, this is my second year here, that the signals of the institution have been that they want me here and that my work is appreciated. So I'm from a little village, so I just always feel a little out of place everywhere I go in these kinds of places. So thank you. This award is awesome. I appreciate it.
Right, before you go anywhere, we have to photo op here. So two things. This is your plaque, and there's also a gift card. Thank you. There you go. Thank you, sorry.
Now, I would like to extend congratulations to our December Employee of the Month, Carmen Lopez. Here are some of the highlights from the nominations received. Carmen Lopez, her role as registrar has been exceptional in supporting and enrolling immigrant families, particularly with asylum seekers from Venezuela, ensuring their smooth transition into the PRF. Her efforts extend coordinating with community agencies and ensuring students access to essential programs. Fluent in Spanish, Ms. Lopez bridges the gap between the testing center, counselors, families, and community agencies. Her ability to communicate effectively and empathetically is invaluable, especially in assisting new English learners. Despite daily challenges, Ms. Lopez maintains a positive and helpful demeanor, managing multiple tasks efficiently. Her hard work and dedication significantly contribute to the welcoming and supportive environment at OPRF, embodying the school spirit and values. Congratulations, Carmen.
Yeah, I would like to extend congratulations to our volunteer of the month, Kim Bates. Here are some of the highlights from the nominations received for Kim. Kimberly Bates demonstrates remarkable leadership, guiding the applause board through challenging transitions with a positive attitude and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Kimberly has significantly contributed to applause from revamping the website to taking on the interim treasurer role. She actively supports various aspects, including tech, fundraisers, and overall board functions, and always goes the extra mile. Her involvement extends beyond her responsibilities as she and her daughter actively volunteer for various events showcasing her selflessness and open-hearted approach. Congratulations again, Kim. Congratulations, Kim.
Thank you. Today we are also pleased to continue our new sustainability recognition program. Starting this school year, we will recognize 2 sustainability champions, 1 student and 1 employee for their exemplary efforts in environmental sustainability. The student sustainability champion for the month of December is Willa Oman. Okay. Here are some of the highlights from the nomination received for Willa. Willa has been actively involved in litter collection around Oak Park and River Forest for years, sharing her efforts on Instagram at Walks with Willa. She encourages other high school students to join her in these eco-friendly walks, fostering a culture of environmental stewardship. Through her regular trash collection walks, Willa not only cleans up the community, but also raises awareness about environmental responsibility benefiting everyone. Congratulations, Willa. Is there something you'd like to say?
Thank you so much for this award. I plan on studying ecology and conservation in college, so this is really meaningful for me. And yeah, it's just been really fun to get to see my friends and family engage in this project alongside me. And yeah, if you do want to follow my Instagram account, the username is @walks_with_Willa. So thank you so much.
Well, you too have a photo opportunity here.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations. Sustainable, useful love there.
And next, congratulations are also in order for Anthony Clark, our faculty sustainability champion. A few highlights for the nominations received for Anthony. Anthony Clark was recognized for his impactful work in addressing food insecurity in the OPRF area through the Unity Food Program. The program allows people to freely access the food they need, no questions asked, ensuring essential nutrition is available to everyone. His initiative brings attention to the often overlooked issue of food scarcity in privileged communities, emphasizing that food justice is an integral part of environmental justice. Congratulations again, Anthony.
Okay, congratulations to all of our December award winners. Our next transition, which
Have a good break.
Public. Okay. We want to make sure there's enough seats. Yeah. Okay. Our next segment is public comment, and Lisa.
We have no public comments for tonight.
Okay. Our second element in the public comment is our public hearing on the 2023 levy. So the 2023 estimated levy was approved at the November 16, 2023 board meeting, which was more than 20 days prior to the levy adoption. At 7:55 p.m., still in the fall, I call this public hearing in order on Thursday, December 21st, 2023, for the Oak Park and River Forest High School 2023 tax levy. Notice of this public hearing appeared in the December 13, 2023 edition of the Wednesday Journal newspaper. At this time, I ask for any written or oral comments to be received.
There is no public comments for the 2023 levy.
I think we have somebody here to make public. Oh. No.
No comment.
If there are no, not any oral, okay, at 7:55 and 40 seconds, I am now closing the public hearing. Okay. And we now move to our consent agenda. Board members, are there any items on the consent agenda that you would like to have pulled for further discussion? Fred?
D. Policies for secondary management.
Okay. Any others? Okay. So I move to approve the consent items as follows. A, approval of open and closed minutes of November 16 and December 7, 2023, and a declaration that the audio tapes of the closed session minutes of March 2022 be destroyed. B, approval of the personnel recommendations, including new hires, transfers, resignations, and releases. C, approval of the Board of Education meeting dates for the 2024 school year. E, approval of the Board of Education goals for the 2023-2024 school year. F, approval of the October 23 treasurer's report as presented. G, approval of the October 2023 financial report as presented. H, approval of the November and December 2023 check disbursements and financial resolutions, including the payroll resolution of January 2024. And ask for a second.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yeah.
Ms. Williams-Lee.
Yes.
Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Dr. Maharaj.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Arkin.
Yes.
Mr. Costi.
Yes, the motion passes, and we will look back now to, I move to approve the following policies for second read and action. 2:20, power and duties of the Board of Education indemnification. 2:120, board member development. 2:200, type of Board of Education meetings. 2:220, Board of Education meeting procedures. 2:220 E2, Exhibit 2, motion to adjourn the closed meeting. 2:220 E6, Exhibit 6, log of closed meeting minutes. 4:10, fiscal and business management. 4:60, purchase and contracts. 4:130, free and reduced price food services. 4:160, environmental quality of buildings and grounds. 5:30, hiring process and criteria. And 5:190, teacher qualifications. And ask for a second. Second. Okay. And so discussion.
The reason I pulled this particular item was the increase in the threshold for contracts, moving from 25,000 to 35,000. And I thought that this there should be some understanding and discussion about this rather than just moving it along through a consent agenda. So I was wondering if Tony could explain what the changes are and how it affects our district and what we see as the need for it.
Sure. State legislature has recently updated this policy at a statewide level from 25,000 to 35,000. The 25,000 had not been a number that was increased for a long period of time. That has now been increased to account for rising prices. So this policy would then follow the state law to match the threshold as in the new law signed by the governor.
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call?
Ms. Williams-Lee.
Yes.
Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane.
Yes.
Mr. Arkin.
Yes.
Dr. Maharaj.
Yes.
Mr. Bradley.
Yes.
And Ms. Costi.
Yes. The motion passes. And we move to our action items. So I will get it in play.
Go ahead.
I move to approve 2 new English language learner courses for semester 2 and an additional 0.6 FTE at a total estimate cost of $31,434 to $50,619 for semester 2. And ask for a second. And Dr. Johnson?
Yes, so this item comes to us because we've had a bit of a shift throughout the school year in the number of English language learners that we have in school. And so both Dr. Lori Fiorenza and the World Languages Division Head, Mike Seduna, are here to present a little bit of information and to answer any questions you may have. This item is in compliance with priorities 1 and 2 of our strategic plan and district policies 6145 and 6160. So I'll take over you.
Thank you. We just have a very quick presentation to just explain, kind of set the stage for what's been going on, Claudia will start with an explanation about yellow program.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I will go over, just some history of how we enroll our ELL students and the two types of ELL students that we have in our school. Okay. So, how our students matriculate to OPRF, we identify them as ELL learners because every family who's new to the school has to fill out the home language survey. And depending on how they answer that questionnaire, if they answer yes to any of the two questions that ISB requires, we have to give them a WIDA screener test. The WIDA screener determines whether they need an ELL class if they're learning English still. Once we determine that, we either recommend the ELL class or their mainstream class. So the two types of students or ELL learners that we have are long-term EL students. And these students have been learning English for 6 or more years, starting ELL in elementary school. Okay. While they may speak, read, write English fluently, they still need support in mainstream classes. And these students also still take the access test, which is a required test from ISB. It's a yearly test, so they can show proficiency in their learning of English. Okay. We have that number for us, since I've been here, has always been below 20. And just this year, ISB notified us that we have over 20 students. Per ISB guidelines, when we have over 20 students who speak the same language and haven't passed the access test, we need to create a more robust ELL program and provide more support for them. So that's our long-term ELLs. We also have our short-term EL students. And this is the group of students who've been learning English for 5 or less years. These are our students who come to the US and they're high school age students, and they're new. They don't know any English. So in the past couple of weeks, we've had an influx of more students like this. While traditionally our EL class has been, they're not all speaking the same language, it's not all Spanish. And they've all had, levels 1 through 4 all in one class because it's always been less than 10 students. This year, it's growing. So currently in our EL class, we've seen an influx of students, and just as of recently, we're up to 22 students, and 12 of those students are, while they're, have diverse language backgrounds, Japanese, Ukrainian, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog. The majority of them are speaking Spanish and are newcomers, and they don't know English. So because of this, Lori and I have been working on creating a program to better serve both our long-term and our short-term EL students.
So part of that plan began 3 weeks prior to, actually 9 days prior to final exams. We added some teaching assistant paraprofessional support, specifically Spanish speaking. We've added a few, I believe 2 at this point. We also added a co-teacher to the current ELL class that was really inundated with students, as Claudia said, from levels 1 to 4, which 1 being really no English for some, but still need high levels of support. And in fact, Claudia was that co-teacher. So in semester 2, as we're asking tonight, pending board approval, we'd like to add the English learner literacy class, which is a class that's going to teach non-speaking English students literacy skills in other content areas, so through math or science. And then Spanish language arts, which is an English class that will be taught strictly in Spanish. So we need those 2 teachers to improve our program and enhance our students' outcomes and improve their English. We're also going to modify 2 of our current classes. One already came to the board, which was our English language learning study skills and supports class. We brought that in October and simply asked for that to be a credit-bearing class and more robust than the current English language learner study hall class we had. So we are moving that or expediting that support to this semester instead of waiting until August. In addition, we currently have an ELL class that Claudia was co-teaching. We're actually going to split that class so that the students that are levels 1 and 2 are in one class together, and students that are levels 3 and 4 are in a class together. Because we believe that will really help expedite their learning of English language skills. Yeah, some additional modifications that we've made to better support the students that were already here, that are the long time learners, like Claudia indicated, and our newcomer students. We created a Spanish speaking advisory to support our students. And then instead of taking finals, our newcomers met and had a support group that was run by one of our special education instructional coaches. Our PE teachers jumped in, and 3 of them ran some sessions for students there. And we also had our instructional technology coach jump in and offered some help. So those students had 3 periods of just intensive help, community, and just, I think a good way to send them off for 14 days, knowing that we really cared about them. For semester 2, we're working on, not sure where we're going to land yet, but we're trying to get a peer tutoring program up and running, specifically with students that are either bilingual or speak Spanish and have tested out of the program to serve as peer tutors. We are working on getting our report cards in the home language so that our parents understand and follow their students' growth and learning. And then we are putting an ELL summer school program into our current summer school program to support those students as well. Any questions?
Yeah, one quick question. You mentioned that there were students that have several different languages, but that there's not many of them. How are they being served? Or are their needs being addressed?
So all of our students are in the ELL class, and the ELL teacher uses a variety of strategies to teach multilinguals.
We've also kicked out some technology apps to our teachers who might encounter students in a science class or in a math class to assist with translating. Claudia and I went to see another program in another school just to garner ideas of how to support our teachers in that range. So we're still implementing some things and thinking through some things. Technology is a big help right now.
It seems likely that this population is going to grow, continue to grow in the future. We don't know at what pace. I'm curious if you thought ahead and you're thinking about sort of what your thresholds are for additional needs. Just past the 20 mark and you're coming to us. Is it 25? Is it 30? Is it sort of, we're going to figure that out as it happens?
It varies. Last week we had a student from Brazil take the Vita test. and the student did not, was not eligible for ELL. But it seems like every other week we're getting a new student, and not necessarily all from the Spanish-speaking country. But I do see that it is growing and will possibly in the future need other classes. Like ESL history, ESL, the science core classes with ESL. And from what Lori and I have seen, the classes have an ESL teacher that teaches the content, and they also have in the class an ESL teacher assistant.
So one of the things we know is that coming from the middle school, we will probably enrich 28 students into our ELL program as freshmen next year. So we are currently considering an ELL science class because we know we do have a teacher who may or may not wish to teach yet, but they have a bilingual endorsement and an ESL endorsement. We have about 12 teachers that have ESL endorsements. So we have put out a call to those teachers to determine their level of interest in some ESL classes. We have put on applications moving forward or job descriptions moving forward. Bilingual preference is preferred. So we've made that shift so that we pay more attention to ensuring that as we do interviews and look at candidates that we're considering that strongly, that we know our population is going to continue to increase. As Claudia said, considering the ELL history class and considering having more teaching assistants to matriculate to different classes with the students in the elective arena, such as foods or PE, where safety may be a concern. If you can't speak English, it's really hard to know when I say get away from the fire or be careful near the pool. So we want to just be really cognizant of how we move forward. We'll come with a full plan as we see how semester 2 plays out.
So so it sounds like we know that next year we're gonna double this population. Do we have any indicators about the 7th graders in our feeder middle schools? Do we know if that trend is gonna continue?
I don't.
No, we haven't received that information, only incoming freshmen.
And I'm not 100% sure how many seniors we have leaving, so I don't know if that'll balance out. We just know we're receiving 28, but we can get that information.
Just a comment, I appreciated your responses during the week to the board members that had questions on this issue. And I think that you said that you were reaching out to other local high schools just for guidance on building this out. I would encourage you to look to CPS if you haven't already. I know SciMets and there are a number of local high schools within CPS that dealt with many languages in the building really successfully over the years. So
thank you.
This might be a question for a different department, but could you comment on what's being done for the parents, if anything, of these children that are in these ELL classes? Are they are resources or links to resources being sent home with the students or direct outreach for that matter?
Yes, so just yesterday we had a meeting with incoming parents, and our counselor Esteban Medina presented the information in Spanish for them and gave them a tour of the building as well, and presented them with information from Triton for adult ESL. And the families who did come to our meeting, they also took more information for the families who couldn't make it.
We also have the community liaison coordinator. I just probably completely butchered the title that Ty Garland has, but he has been doing a lot with our families. Transportation, food, helping get them communication, support. He has been bringing them back and forth. He's done a lot. We've had our Aspira group working with our students and our families. So I think the community has really done a great job to rally around and support the families and the students. It's been really actually very impressive. These students have gone through a lot and their families, so it's just really, many of our staff are volunteering in some of the places where the families have been staying, they've been volunteering, bringing clothing. So just a lot has been happening, and we will continue to support.
In addition, we will have a bilingual parent advisory committee, starting next semester. So we will be soliciting parents to join our committee.
This is in addition of requirement by ISB. We are required because we have 20 or more students speaking one language to have this parent advisory committee, and it must be at least 4 times a year. So it's all of this is tied to our title grant. So when I submitted the title grant, we had to make a commitment that we were going to start this year. So we won't be held to the 4 this year, but we had to start. We have to be able to show at the end of the year that we have done something. So in the 3rd quarter will be our very first called BPAC, our very first parent committee. So we're looking forward to that.
Right?
Yes, first of all, number one, is thank you, because within your report, you show how this is aligned with policy 7.2, racial equity policy. So thank you for doing that. As the parent of a English learner who graduated from here some time ago, I want to thank you for bringing this to the fore and to the front. I know it's kind of because of the requirements of ISB, it's kind of we're being forced to do this, but something we probably should have been talking about long ago. You know, one of my, I think one of the considerations and one of the questions I'll be asking moving forward, and I'm all for what you're proposing now for 2nd semester, but moving forward in the future is that if we have a relatively static enrollment, this is really a change in mix rather than an increase in enrollment. You know, this is what I mean, we're adding 20 each year, 25 or whatever the number of students, additional students. So if we're going to grow, or are we keeping our enrollment? This is a consideration that we need to look at, because it has implications in FTE, that if we have, let's for the sake of talking, you have 3,500 students, and the number of students that are growing in ELL, all right, but we're staying static, means that we're losing, we're I don't want to say losing, but the need in other areas is being reduced.
No.
Am I making myself clear or not? Is that if you've got, for the sake of, if you've got 30 students that are ELL, all right, it means there are 30 openings somewhere.
Yeah.
If you're staying static, that's
So
my premise.
I don't know that it's as linear as that, specifically because let's just say we have 20 less students overall, but we've increased by 20 in our ELL students. The specialization that's required to.
No, I understand that. I understand there's specialization, and it's more expensive because you have to have TAs and you have to have co-talk classes, etc. But I'm also trying to say, be cognizant as we move forward with this and looking at our FTEs. It's just not. It's not automatic addition. Is that there's got to be a balance somewhere.
It's only addition because those teachers have to be able to speak Spanish. So for example, the Spanish language arts class, the teacher has to be able to speak Spanish.
I get that,
So,
I get it.
Okay.
That's right, and so the answer is complicated, Fred.
Yeah.
It's
I
not,
understand it, that's why I'm asking it now, not having, so that we can think about this when it comes to the spring when we get the FTE request.
absolutely. Lori and I have talked. Lori is fully aware of when we what we're doing right now is something right now for this moment. So it is not part of that kind of complex weighing of resources that goes on when we make our formal staffing requests in February. When we do that, there's that kind of give and pull, all right, where, you know, tug or whatever it is, where you shift FTE from various places because of your overall enrollment. But it absolutely, and I think from what you've shared and we've explained here, I think you understand this really well. There is an element of increased allocation of resources that is going to be needed for this. That we won't be able to pull from other places to make this happen. It's just the nature of what's needed with these teachers and the resources involved. But there is going to be a little bit of balancing involved too. Yeah, thank you.
I think, Brandon, to that, to that point, it just sounds like there's a combination of things going on, right? So that you have some increases in population of EL students, and what that mix looks like in any given semester or term could be just different based on what students are coming in. So I think if you think about the allocation, because when I read through this, my thought was that we are going to need more, and it's more, but it's going to be something that is going to be pretty iterative on an ongoing basis as we kind of understand as the population grows and what that makeup of that population looks like.
That's right. Which would be most helpful, and why we put the bilingual preferred on the job descriptions moving forward, because it would be wonderful to need to hire a chemistry teacher, and that chemistry teacher just so happened to have their bilingual endorsement, so that as things ebb and flow, that teacher can be utilized to speak Spanish and teach a chemistry class, and it doesn't require us to come to the board and ask for additional resources.
And we looked earlier at the number. It's almost it's an embarrassment of resources that we didn't realize we had necessarily until we were looking at this. How many teachers did we think?
We have
12 teachers who ESL endorsement in the school right now. Some of whom, aren't.
Maybe it's been a long time since we've had it, but I think it bolsters our equity policy, and it supports it by adding this to job descriptions and really being thoughtful about how we hire and focusing on hiring teachers that are bilingual.
And I'm just curious, I'm assuming there's a certain certification to be for ELL, and is there an opportunity to encourage teachers who are bilingual but don't have that certification to support them and being able to get that if they might be interested in teaching these classes?
Yeah, I think that's a discussion Claudia and I have had that we haven't really put forth too far, because right now let's take care of semester 2.
Right.
But I think that could absolutely be part of the plan as well.
Marianne has a question as well.
Okay, Marianne.
Hi. So I'm very much in favor of bulking up our capability in this arena. So this is all great. I think my question has to do with kind of what I don't know if you have a sense of what percentage of the increase is being driven by the recent political move in the migrant crisis. And the reason I ask that is this goes a little bit to kind of Fred's question about, sort of ideally we'd like to be able to predict, right? And make our budgeting plans. And this has been a chaotic situation where you've all had to be very flexible and kind of adapt on the fly. And given that, we have these students coming in and we have to take care of them and we want to take care of them, but we don't know past, the end of January whether they will still be getting support for housing in Oak Park, right? And if they're going to be potentially sent elsewhere. I guess.
So
is that, then that has some implications. If it's only a small percentage, then maybe we don't need to think about that so much. Does that make sense as a question?
Oh, it absolutely does. It is a small percentage. So
Okay.
What triggered the need to implement these courses and the Parent Advisory Committee really wasn't the migrant students. It was our current students that were in the building. We had just hit the threshold of over 20. So in mid-October is when the state kicked back the title grant to ask the specific question, or when will you have this parent advisory committee and when will you start this class? So Claudia and I were investigating how to do this and visiting schools as the migrant population arrived. So we had 28 Spanish-speaking ELL students, not including other students already in our building that speak a different language, which I think that took us to 40, 45-ish. But now with the migrant students, we're almost at 60. So 12,
So yeah,
16.
but that's actually really helpful to me, because then, you know, not even a quarter, right? So even whatever happens politically with that,
Yes.
it seems like this is going to be an ongoing substantive need that we are going to need to hire for and plan for. So
Correct.
super helpful. Thank you so
And
much.
the 28 students coming to us from the middle schools are not representative of the migrant population either. They are students that are already within the middle school.
Yeah. That's also really useful to know. Thank you.
Yes.
So one quick question, just coming back to the several kids that have the individual different languages that they're in need of support. Have we have such a dynamic volunteer community in OPRF? Have we sent out any formal communications to the community looking for tutors to get involved in any way so that there's a direct one-on-one that are proficient in Tagalog or Ukrainian, because they're here, they're certainly here. I'm just wondering if that sort of overture has been made to the community.
We have not. I think we relied more on the technology piece for translating. But that is something that our teachers mostly reached out.
Just very briefly, I think Dr. Maharaj covered most of what I was going to ask about. But just to be clear, you're saying that, as we all know, asylum-seeking migrants were arriving in Chicago and then being placed throughout the Chicagoland area, and it was October when we had a significant accommodation of those asylum seekers. Are you saying that at that time, then the net addition of Spanish-speaking students to your program was only 12 to 16 from that experience? Okay, all right, thank you.
Comment the question. When I, this predicting, I do know from the D97 is seeing, significant increases in schools that I know teachers are in. So I think the data with that, although that may not help us predict with with these other influxes. My question, that's my comment. My question is this. We determine the need to participate in this based on some kind, you reference some kind of a test to which they answer 2 questions.
Yes, so every new family to any district, they have to fill out what is called a home language survey. And ISB has a couple of questions on there. If they answer yes to any of the questions, we have to give them the VITA screener. And the questions are asking if the student speaks another language at home or anybody home speaks another language.
So my question,
and we can't change
what
it.
language is this test in?
The VITA screener is in English.
So I guess the bigger question I would have is, how well do you feel our, screening and or self, because someone can say that my family speaks English just to avoid, maybe a stigma that they don't. So how well do we feel we're capturing the students who need these services with this methodology?
So we did the home language survey, but we also did reports from the state where they've had to have, they've taken the screener before. So we get that information, and if they haven't taken the screener with us, we have the students retake it. And it's a lot of times they pass the screener.
But I think it's important to know that there is a stigma. And the families can refuse the service, even if they qualify, they know. So one of the things Claudia and I talked about was we would like to really refine and be more intentional in how we talk to families about the services. We have to remove the stigma. As our board policy says, we have to remove the barriers. And if the barrier is a stigma or embarrassment that your student would be in those programs, then we need to work on how we present that, which is another reason we're going to other schools that we were intentional. Dr. Applewhite helped us, she went with us as well, to really look at those schools that are exemplary or their ELL students are growing and phasing out. So we were intentional about the schools that we visited because they have strong programs. And so we did talk quite some time about how we're talking to our families about these programs to really make sure they understand what's at stake and what the benefits could be. So we hope to, when we come back with a plan of this is what we need moving forward. We've shared enough with you now that you'll understand. We're going to be intentional about building this program so that our students improve their outcomes and their future.
Thank you. That addressed what my okay. Thank you very much.
We already got the vote for the classes, so I just want to clarify. We have those classes, yes?
And
the
no,
and the FTE.
So we've had our discussion, now we need to,
now
we have to call for the vote.
Okay.
Are you trying to influence the vote?
No.
Oh, by the way, congratulations on your recognition of your podcast. Okay. All right. With that said, we are ready to call the roll.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Ms. Williams-Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Livingston,
Yes.
Dr. Maharaj,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
and Mr. Foxley.
Yes. The vote passes 7-0 and you've got your response.
All right, okay.
Dr. Karen, that was a vote.
That was a vote. I want to make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, our next action item is I move to approve to adopt the resolution for the 2023 tax levy as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, may I ask for a roll call, please?
Dr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Williams-Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Brisbane,
Yes.
Dr. Maharaj,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
and Mr. Foxley.
Yes. The motion passes. And that concludes our action items for this evening. We now have our potentially seasonal spending discussion topics.
We're an hour away.
So be careful. Would you like to take the floor with our project 2 construction estimate?
Yeah, our first of 2 discussion items this evening is the project 2 control estimate. Probably needs very good introduction from me. I'm trying to go to the team. It's just a moment. I'll say 2 things that way. One, of course, this is a continuation of the scope conversation we had last week. Adding to it was The overall control, 90% control estimate, we'll explain a little bit about what that is. Here, 90% control estimate for project. And it also answers in some of the appendices to the slide deck that we see there, some of the questions that the board asked during our conversation last week, particularly about some of these spaces that had shifted between the various versions of this. I want to say that, again, of course, as you mentioned a second ago, that this is not for a vote tonight. This is merely to get information out there, field some questions, have a conversation, so that when we bring this in January, we'll be ready to vote on the control estimate so that we can put the project out to bid. This board item is in alignment with priority 4 and district policy 4150 and 460. And with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Tony to kick off the slide presentation.
Okay, great. I just want to give a quick recap of the estimating process and how we have gotten to tonight. In February 2023, the schematic design was presented and an initial estimate was provided to fund the project at just under $102 million. Between August and September, the project moved from schematic design to design development, and a second estimate was completed. The first estimate was done by Concord Group. The second estimate, when we got into DD, was done by Gilbane. And that number came in at approximately $123 million. From September to November of 2023, as was discussed at the last meeting, we went through the budget reconciliation process to get to the 90% control estimate. And at the prior special or at the prior meeting, the cow, you saw the visualization of the 90% construction documents. And then tonight we will go through the budget for the design that you have seen. From here, we will bring this document back at the special Board of Education meeting in January for a vote and approval. This is essential as we have some protection language on cost in our contracts. So the approval of this budget not only is a budget approval for the project, but also sets the thresholds for which we would go back to put a potential rebid if bids came in too high. Then from June through August of 26, we go through an awful lot of construction. So with that, I will kick it over to Gilbane just to talk through where the estimates have come in at.
All right, good evening. I do have Stuart McKinsey with me tonight, who is our chief estimator and has worked extensively on the estimate. So I'm going to give the overview of the estimate, and then any questions when we get to that stage. If there's questions for Stuart, he can answer those for you. In the board packet that was sent out on page 4 sorry, advance the slide. This is very small, I know. This was on page 4 of the board packet for a little larger version. I just want to cover this kind of at a high level, and then we can dive into questions. So as Tony said, back in November of 2022, the budget was set at 101.7 million and some change. We then in October of 23 did our 100% DD estimate. That was Gilbane's first estimate on the documents. That came in at 123.2 million. And then we've most recently completed our 90% construction documents, meaning we're 90% of the way there to going out to bid. And the last 10% of the documents and the refinement of the drawings is happening with the FGM team now, preparing us to go out to bid following the approval on January 11th. So where we stand today, we're at 101.9, just a little bit short of 101.9 million. The subtotal for the construction cost, the hard cost of construction is just over 74 million. In general, we saw from DD estimate to CD estimate, we saw a lot of the packages and disciplines of work come down in price. However, there was some refinement and further detailing to the structure. And so We did see a little bit of an uptick in the number in excavation and concrete foundations. So that's just further refinement. Part of that did stem from the reduction of steel, of structural steel. So you notice there's a pretty significant reduction in structural steel. Part of that was we talked 2 weeks ago, sorry. There was some additional columns added that brought down the overall weights, but resulted in the addition of caissons and grading utilities. So it's just shifting some of the funds from one discipline to another. I want to talk about the section under the subtotal construction cost and how we get to the total construction cost here. We do still have an escalation factor on this. We're carrying about 5% escalation, as we recommend 4% per year. And that's to get us to the midpoint of construction. So right now with the unit prices that Stuart used to come up with the estimate, we feel those prices are good today and on bid day. So we're really escalating from bid day through the midpoint of construction, Q2 of 2025. And that's to account for escalation that will be accounted for in the bids of the contracts coming forward. So we do have that still built in there. Another contingency we have is the design and estimating contingency. So initially in the Concord estimate, there was zero design and estimating contingency. Gilbane, we always recommend that we carry design and estimating contingency as the design evolves, that percentage continues to go down and be reduced. So in DD, we had 2% carried, which amounted to about $2 million. Now with the refinement of the design, where we're at today, we've reduced that, but I do want to point out we're still carrying $777,000, 1%, and that's in the number of the 101.9. All right, so that's something that's different from the Concord estimate that is carried in the Gilbane estimate, and that will just go away essentially on bid day. All right, and then the last contingency we have is construction contingency. We're carrying that at a consistent rate of 5%, which has been what Concord started with. We carried it at DD, and we carried it here at 90% CD. So that construction contingency will get divvied up here a little bit as we go out to bid. A portion of that, a good portion of that will remain as an owner-held contingency as we move into construction. The other piece of that will get rolled into the bid packages as bid package allowances. We can discuss those further if needed, but that is about just short of $4 million. So that in total, plus the CM fees reimbursables, gets us to today, we sit at a total construction cost of 92.8. All right, we have held the owner soft cost budget at a consistent $9,042,000. That has been consistent. That was established in the Concord estimate. We've worked with Tony and his team to check against that number as we progress through the design and what's all accounting towards that number. And we feel comfortable that that $9 million number is still an accurate target. So we've held that $9 million, and that brings us to the 101.9 million is those main categories. You have just Tony touched on some of these next steps here, and on January 11th, we'll come to the committee of the whole special board meeting, asking for your approval to go out to bid based on this same estimate, the second review of that. You'll also be hearing on the geothermal plan, an update and presentation for discussion on that. And following the approval, we plan to go out to bid the following week if everything goes well on the 11th. So the target is the 16th or 17th for documents to hit the street. And then bids would be due mid-February, targeting the 15th of February there. So it's about 33 bid packages is what we have broken down right now. On January 25th, you will be hearing the geothermal plan presented for approval. And depending on the outcome of that, if geothermal is not approved to move forward, we will pull, as discussed 2 weeks ago, we will pull the mechanical bid off the street. redesign the mechanical system and then go back out to bid in March with an award in April for that. So that's kind of our contingency plan if needed. And then following the receipt of bids in mid-February on February 15th, we will begin presenting those to you for award at the March board meetings. So by the end of March, we intend to have the bid packages awarded, contracts go out, and construction will be starting in June of 2024. As Tony mentioned, or Dr. Johnson mentioned, we did attach 5 appendix slides in an effort really to answer some of the questions that came out of 2 weeks ago's meeting. We're not going to go through all those in detail, so unless you have specific questions, you want to revert back to some of those pages. So at this point, I think I'll open it up to questions. But
yeah, I just want to say one thing first regarding those slides. So thank you for referencing those. I want to just remind the board how we talked about that scope 2 weeks ago. There were items that we referenced to as alternates, right, to the project. Those are not add alternates that we're saying we now want to add on to the top of the cost that we see here. The idea is that let's see how this bid day goes. If the bid day goes well, and we are under budget with what comes back to us from the street, we're going to go to those alternates to fill in that to get us, still within budget, but making sure that we're satisfying the scope within the sequence, the prioritized sequence that we had there. That would be something that we would bring back to the board after bid days, to be explicit about that. So I just want to make those alternates clear. Okay.
Regarding those alternates?
Yeah.
That's specifically what we're looking at on page 10 of this, where it says appendix 5 alternate summary.
That's correct.
Okay, the rest of that above, those other appendices are within the project.
You got it.
Correct. Those are some of the revisions made to get to the 90% budget.
And you know what, could I ask you to clarify that too? The 90, when you say the 90%, you're really talking about design. You said 90% budget. Could you explain?
Oh, yeah.
Is this project going to go up by 10% after we complete this? Explain that.
Yeah. No, it's getting us to the budget established based on the 90% drawings, construction documents that were published by that.
Questions? Nothing?
Just had one question, one clarification about the site services line. Is that specifically the buildings where the workers can go to the temporary structures? Is that what that encompasses for the site services?
Yeah,
and like porta-johns and stuff like that.
Yeah, good question. Yes, that is things like dumpsters, portable toilets, temporary stair towers, temporary hoisting and loading platforms, trailers, the Gilbane trailer, kind of all the things that are necessary to make a project happen, that won't necessarily be bid out, but there will be budget established for the project as we go. And those are all billed at cost with a percentage markup per contract.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes, first of all, thank you. I have to say that in this kind of scope, of this presentation, I know years ago, the idea of presentations was baffling with BS. This, I think, is a little bit of fluster them with font. Because we really can't see. The font is too small. I'm appreciative that we have Gilbane's your presentation, but we don't have in the appendixes, we don't have larger exhibits. Like we have in our next, I think we're next going to talk about state of the district where we have the full, the full exhibits. I have a couple of questions. First of all, overall, in terms of construction costs, you know, is an overall view, we know that since the beginning of the pandemic, construction costs have skyrocketed. That's one of the reasons that this project originally estimated at about $67 million is now at 102, and that's kind of scaled back a little bit. Where are you projecting? Where are you seeing construction costs go currently? What's happening? What do you think is going to happen over the term of the project?
We've actually started to see things start to wane and level off. We're also predicting that that is going to continue. Some of our projections that our logistics part of the company is looking at is it could be as good as 3 or 3.5% escalation this next year. We do not believe that it's going to continue. Last year, we were predicting about 6. We ended up being a little bit less than that. So we were tracking closer to 4.5. So we're starting to see kind of a plateau building. We knew that it wasn't going to be sustainable to keep it moving up in the direction of COVID, but we're starting to see material and other pieces start to come in, especially like steel. It was very high before. We're starting to see that come back down and be a little bit normal. Still have a little bit of issues with lead times, things like that on certain materials, but for the most part, we're seeing that it's starting to come down within a manageable range.
And then we're also bound in terms of labor costs, we're bound by prevailing rates, correct?
Well, yeah, so prevailing wage and this project will be predominantly union or union.
You know, I do have a question. I understand the escalation. I understand the construction contingency. My question is, why is there a design contingency within the construction budget? I mean, we spent a lot of money. FGM's making a lot of money on this deal, and so why is there a contingency there for design?
We always try to carry a design and estimating contingency to account for that. Right now, it's 90%. It's not 100% design. So we have to have a little bit of contingency for whatever might be designed.
Okay, so it's not your design. It's just
it's
that
not.
If there's a difference between where you are now and the 90% and the 100% when it's complete.
It's just to keep us whole going forward and make sure that there's no dip or anything that we're gonna foresee. Something could come up, and this is just to protect us from it.
Okay, great. The other question I have is, I understand insurance quite well because that's my location. You've got a line in here for CSIP, which I understand what that is. What is the CSIP OSIP, which is the OSIP is what we're purchasing for the general liability OSIP. What is the difference in coverage? And it's costing $396,000. What is that line?
So the OSIP covers general liability,
right,
and excess liability. The difference in coverage is everything else. All your other sorry. I apologize. I'm drawing a blank on that one, but it's a much smaller percentage. The bigger piece of the general liability and excess liability insurance has been removed from that.
No, I understand. I'm just wondering what's within that 300, almost $400,000 number that we're paying. Because we've got the general liability under the OSIP, we've got the comp under the comp. And you've got your bond over there, and you've got builder's risk. So what else are we paying for? So you can
I
get
can
back
get
to
you
me on
clarification on that.
Sure, sure. Okay, thanks. Now I did want to go through some of the appendixes. on costs. Because this is what we'd asked for last week. And, if the adjustments, and the one thing that I'm really not understanding is number one, the fourth floor shell space. Where there is a $4 million D&D that's what's the design development costs for the fit out of the wrestling space versus a 1.5 million of the shell estimate space. So you're telling me to fit that as a usable space is an additional $3.5 million from what the original shell was going to be? 2.5. Or 2.5, I'm sorry. It does, I mean, it's a lot of money.
Right. So when I originally did the estimate for this portion in the DD estimate, there was a complete fourth floor with a wrestling area and everything was fit out. It also did not contain the full mechanical space up at the top. So there was one part that was enabling, it was a different design.
Yeah, I think that's what we see in appendix 2.
Right.
Which there's 2 layouts again, which are a little small in my vision.
Understood. The SD budget, I can't speak to, I didn't do that estimate, but for the DD portion, when I did the estimate, the $4 million is to take out everything. That would be the savings from DD to where we are now. That's $4 million in the structure for all of those pieces, the mechanical pieces that would be involved in that. That's why it's a very heavy number, because it was screening, it's the outside wall, it's the finishes for the outside wall, the interior finishes for all of that, plus the floor, plus the rest of the structure that had to be beefed up down below and through the building. So whenever you're taking out a section, it's very heavy because you're using that concrete, you're using the steel, and your foundations are being reduced. So all of that trickles into it being a larger cost. If you were to keep and maintain the same space now, but just shell that space, the only thing you're really removing is no longer the structure and all those other pieces. The 1.5 is only you're removing the finishes and the other pieces that would fit out that space. That's the difference that you're seeing. So one is the structure and everything, plus the finishes that come out, as opposed to shell space, which is just interior finish.
Right, but does the $4 million include, when you look at these 2 layouts, all right, the old one, the D&D, all right, does it include the mechanicals? Okay. You can see the mechanicals on the right side of the layout in the current floor
Yes.
layout.
So the mechanicals are separate outside of the 4 million or the $1.5 million. They're included in the base budget.
This is Allison with FGM. Sorry. There's one other factor in here that didn't get mentioned, and that is that as soon as you add the occupied space at this floor, there's a requirement to provide toilet rooms up here and egress corridors that were able to be taken out that are part of that savings in that 4 million that aren't part of that aren't necessary in a shell space. We have to provide toilet rooms and like I said, a corridor. So there's costs associated with that by providing occupied space outside of the mechanical room for normal occupants at that level.
Okay. But the moving of these mechanicals, because they were somewhere else, they obviously weren't on this original D&D layout. All right. I mean, is that saving money by putting them here? I mean, and what kind of dollars are we talking about?
So in the current 4th floor layout, where you can see the mechanicals kind of in what's that sunken roof area where the fourth floor is being removed at this point. Those units would have been up on the fourth floor roof.
Right.
Requiring screening, mechanical screening for noise. So by moving those down into the lowered section, and eliminating the fourth floor roof, they're now sitting on the third floor roof at the fourth floor level, right? Though the screening goes away, so that thereby reduces the structure number. The other mechanical equipment that's kind of in this darker gray box, that's in the same position, that it was.
And the savings of making that move is a separate $1.1 million that's part of the enabling work elimination number on the following page. That's not part of, I don't believe that's part of that $4 million. That's separate $1.1 million.
That's correct.
Okay. Included, and I believe I saw that in your budget, that included in this is the build out of the or the infill, and I'd like to know to what point the build out is in the west pool area, because I know we were talking last time about trainer space opening up into the current locker rooms on the west side of the building, and then the west pool area being infilled, and then the wrestling space moving there. So are those two items included in our $101 million budget?
No, currently what's in the base budget is that's a multi-purpose room. Or not forward.
To clarify, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, in the base budget is the wrestling space to be also used as a multi-purpose space, exactly as we described it last time. What is not in the base bid, but as an alternate, would be that trainers being able to use the locker room space. But the wrestling space that also has the batting cages and can be used as a multi-purpose space for adaptive PE is in the base numbers of the 1019.
Do we know the cost? I mean, it says TBD of the trainer space.
No, the short answer is no. The drawings and design is still just kind of getting underway and evolving for that, so we have not had a chance to do an estimate for that space, but the scope is pretty limited. It's removing the lockers, it's tearing out the locker base, it's doing a little bit of floor patching, and creating a single user bathroom.
And I want to be sure you didn't say this, so it was gracious of you. It was really I don't know if it was in technically the 11th hour, but it was really at the last minute that our admin team, maybe me, came up with the idea and said, hey, let's build trainers out of the space. And so, that's Xmark ready. By the time we bring this to the board January 11th, do you think we'll have a number for that, Jeremy? Or is
Sure, I'll get you a number.
No, it is crucial that we have a number. We can't put $101 million and build these athletic facilities and then not have an adequate space for our athletic trainers for our students. I mean, that makes no sense. It was always an element that it had been in the project 2 from conceptual design on, that it just never was defined. And I'm upset that it's not in our $101 million because it's something that's necessary.
So just to clarify one point on that, we can do an estimate, as Stuart said, but that will be an alternate at bid day, so you will get those alternates brought to you for approval with actual street numbers, right?
No, I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for your president. So just to
clarify what you just said, so all of these alts, that's right there on the last page, you're gonna price those and you're gonna bring those at the next meeting. So we can discuss those and potentially approve them at the next meeting. I could be correct, the way you framed it was, we're gonna wait and see what the bids come back, and if there's enough money left over, maybe we'll look at those alts, but now it sounds like we're actually gonna have, price tag on these and be able to consider them at the next meeting.
Oh, not exactly. So it's not a contradiction. Could you guys explain that?
Yeah.
It's not considering at the next meeting, but we should know the cost at the next meeting for when the bid comes back later down the road, we'll be well positioned to fold them in. Is that?
Yeah, they'll go out as listed as an alternate in bid documents and the bidders will assign a price tag to each of them. We'll then compile all the different bid packages, costs for each of these alternates and tell you, all right, the alternate one cost is this, you approve or reject.
And for all other than the trainer space expansion, there are preliminary estimate numbers provided for these alternates at this time.
Yeah, that does, I appreciate that, I'll just put out there for my colleagues, I am a little concerned that we are being penny wise and pound foolish with some of these things. Our track record as a community is that we make major capital investments in our high school every 50 years, and we're not gonna have another bite at this apple for a really long time. So to me, the sort of the touchstone for all of these things is the investment that we're making gonna last 50 years or longer. And so if there are finishes or details where we're reducing our costs, but we also anticipate that the lifetime of that, or whatever that thing is, that finish or that part of the project is gonna last for 15 or 20 years instead of 50 years, I think we're making a mistake. And some of these alts, I think go to that. So I just wanted to make sure that there is going to be a chance to have a real conversation about each one of these alts, because I think that there are some that, I definitely would be in favor of.
Yep. Thank you.
You good?
Yeah, one question got answered that I put in earlier, so.
Okay. My questions are same theme for a minute, which is just timing. And because I heard this is about alternates, right, or decisions. Midday is what, March?
February 15th.
February 15th? Okay. I guess the question I'm trying to understand, chronologically is, and this relates to the geothermal discussion, because that's another decision that needs to be made. And so from a resource prioritization standpoint, in my opinion, the geothermal fits in with these alternates as things that we currently do not have resourced, and we don't know yet what the gap is going to be on bid day. So is that information going to be known so that all of that can be looked at together from a decision-making standpoint versus being piecemeal, meaning geothermal and alternates? Do you understand my question? Can you answer that?
So we'll have the alternate piece. We will not have the geothermal. I don't know where that comes through.
Yeah, Tony, could you speak that timeline, please?
Yeah, it's the reason that we will not have them at the exact same time is that geothermal, when it's brought forward in January with the price tag, if we choose not to go forward with geothermal, then we have to pull, as was mentioned earlier, the mechanical bid back, put the redesigned mechanicals in with a traditional heating and cooling system, reissue that, and then bring that bid in. So it would be a whereas some of these alternates, and the reason they get called alternates is they're the type of roofing that a company may install. The material cost is a little bit different, so you put it in as an alternate. We would not get quality bids if we had two totally different mechanical systems out to bid at the same time. So we'll have to decide how we heat and cool the building in January, and then either stick with the bids that are out that link up to the geothermal system, or redraw and reissue the bids for a traditional system.
To clarify too, sorry, while accepting or not accepting the base bids would be required on bid when bids are brought to the board, if you did choose not to do geothermal and we had to rebid the mechanicals and the mechanical decision and bids come in April, you could hold off on making a decision on the alternates until you have all of the numbers. So if you're still waiting in March for the mechanical bid numbers, you could defer decisions on the alternates until April. And Jeremy, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, the details.
Yeah, I was gonna add that.
Yes, that is, I mean, these are all decisions on incremental resources beyond what is currently there based on bids. And so my only ask is that we have all of the information so that we can, making decisions piecemeal, one at a time is usually ends up causing you future pain. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of PC.
Jeremy, that you would need to be able to make decisions on the other bid packages in order to meet the construction schedule, though, correct? It's just the alternates that could hold on.
That's correct. Yep.
All right, my two other questions. He's forcing me to kind of make this.
Well, I'm gonna ask a question.
What is you part? I think Jeremy, you answered this, but I want to verify it. There was a sizable drop in the escalation. I think you explained it was because we're, already at whatever a third of the way through the chronology of it. So there's a time factor, but then you also mentioned, did you adjust the rate as well? Is it just because of the time, or is it the time and the rate? Or is it some combination of them?
It's a combination of the two. So one part was we did get an economic report, so I did adjust that based on our projection for next year. This goes into, we normally calculate escalation when we start from today's date till midpoint of the construction timeline. What we're doing is we're moving closer to a bid time. We do not foresee changes in material or labor pricing in the next 3 months. So therefore, it was at our discretion to not carry that escalation forward for that time. And so we've started it from bid date to midpoint of construction based on a new and updated escalation for them.
Thank you. My next question is, I'm a little confused. You mentioned that it's evident that the excavation and foundations, the one area that seems like it went up, and it went up rather sizably, percentage wise. And yet what I'm hearing through this is that a lot of the changes that have been made, including the 4th floor and the pool, we're going to reduce the amount of foundation. So I'm hearing, structurally we need less, but the cost went up a heck of a lot. What's going on?
One part is when we were at a BD set, the plans are not always developed as far as they are now. That's part of that contingency that we were showing for design and estimating contingency that went down. But also now that we have the documents for pricing that set as it is, sometimes there's fluctuations in that number. So you reduced one, the other went up into the estimate now. That's how that would be perceived. So the design estimating contingency went up into the trade packages. There are efficiencies in what happened, but for the concrete, it is what it is in the design set currently. So that's currently what's bid. Are there changes that happened because of that? Yes. We've also added more caissons, a few more caissons, because now there's columns which were not there before. So steel shifted into steel and concrete kind of balanced each other out in some ways. But you're looking at the excavation as though it's the whole thing, it's coming out, you're calling out the whole piece. That's that whole basement. It's what we know now and what are our answers to those questions as we've gone through the design process. So this is just a normal thing that would happen whenever we're going from one set to the next. We can't predict everything from a DD set to a CD, but now we've come through a process that we know what that is now. So what we're looking at is DD versus CD, and it's almost done. Did I explain that satisfactorily to you? I mean, it's kind of a thing where I'm looking at, we're building it, I'm looking at the drawing set, what changes, but it's 100% one thing or the other. Jeremy, yeah.
That's.
I saw a sizable more concrete in the foundations than was there in the DD set, in this current set, and there's a reduction in the steel. That's what I've noticed too.
Okay.
We've had larger trusses, they've been reduced. But apart from that, that's the main thing. I think there were some changes in the ERS system too, along with more substantial grade beams than what were previously taken.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I see the questions to my neighbor to the west.
Yeah, to the west. Your western ally. So just since it came up on the topic of geothermal and timing, you've got in your slide 4, January 11th is when you come with the presentation of the geothermal analysis then. So that means a very will completed its test wells, you have the results, you've built an economic model and so forth. So, but bid day is mid-February. Is the default right now in that bid package is that there will be geothermal?
Yes.
Okay. So you probably have a pretty good handle on the the direction or will of the board by January 11th. So is it safe? I mean, the odds are low that you'll have to go reissue. Assuming we like what we hear on the 11th.
To clarify, we have it's in and including geothermal, and that's what will go out because we have to issue those drawings on the 12th. If the board looks like it's going in a different direction on the 11th, we'll start preparing to change the documents, but there will be no ability or time to shift direction in one day and get drawings out and maintain the schedule as required. But we'll know that we need to start prepping and being ready to get those revised documents, mechanical documents out that you see in the timeline.
Okay, thanks.
I think that concludes the questions. Very good. We thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will bring this back pretty much as we see it here for a vote.
Bring it back in the winter.
Which we are. We are 7 minutes away here, right?
Are there gonna be fireworks?
Oh, it's gonna be
It's the expectations, yeah. So now that we truly have our season spanning state of the district.
Yes, give me a second to take over the screen. Some transitioning when he's doing this picture pages. Okay. This is our annual state of the district here, and it's changed a little bit from what we have done in the past. And I want to illustrate some of what those changes are here before we go too much further. So, let's see, does that work? Did I share my screen there, Ed?
Not yet.
No, I did not.
There you go.
All right, let me blow that up here.
You click slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in previous years, we have brought a state of the district that was fully compliant with not only the metrics that lead to our summative designation of the school district, but we also have brought in a large amount of data that satisfied the list of requirements in policy 615. Frankly, that felt to our team, and I think maybe to some extent the board as well, as a bit of a data dump at that point. And so what you saw this school year in some ways is a little bit more thorough analysis of some of the data that would otherwise have been in this board report. Earlier this year, you saw Dr. Lamb, Dr. Fiorenza talk about our AP programming, and we went into that data with a little bit more specificity. We'll continue that theme with the data that is required for policy 615. That allows us to focus in this presentation specifically on the summative designation and how we follow in the state report card for that. Now, the state report card is much more complex, much more robust, and increasingly becoming that way. And it includes much information beyond what you see in the state, in our summative designation. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those things here today, but I want to point out a lot more information. Okay. So I want to talk about just from a high level here really quickly what goes into the state report card. I'm not going to go through this entire slide deck today, but I'm going to highlight a few specific things, and I'm going to actually go to the website for the state report card and talk about that as well. Okay. First, this slide gives us the 4 categories of that school districts can fall into as far as some designations are concerned. We had been commendable for a number of years leading up until last school year. We achieved exemplary status. This year we slipped back into the commendable status school year. That basically means that our school is, we are not in the top 10% of schools in the state. But according to their definition, we don't have any underperforming student groups. That does not mean that we don't have any gaps, of course, and that our graduation rate is above this threshold of 67%. So there's a huge bandwidth of schools that fall within that commendable mode. The summative designation comes from these 8 indicators, and you can see their weights on the right-hand side there. They're sequenced in terms of the weight that the state puts on them. You can see what the state does with this. They really focus on those things that are most important for students to find success, in high school. Are they showing up? Is their attendance good? And are they graduating? And then the third one is, after freshman year, are they on track to do those things? It's only after that you get into more of the proficiency and achievement targets that you see with math, English, and you get to some of the school environment elements there with the climate survey and so on, okay? And so those are all the indicators. They haven't changed from last school year. One thing, of course, that has changed that I know the board is aware of, it was evident in an action item that we brought to the board previously. This is the first year that English learners have been triggered in the system for us. I want to speak to a little bit about why that is the case. Because if you take a look at the overall population of students for EL over the past 2 years, 2 years ago and last year, it's 0.9% for both. Take a look at those raw numbers in the state report card. It's 29 kids to 30 kids. Why is it that such a small shift in our population size suddenly triggered this English learner proficiency to be part of our metric? It's because this is the only metric that is included in the state report card here for our summative designation that is based off of 2 test scores. It's based off of growth. It's based off of what students do over a period of time. They take a look at scores 1 year, then they take a look at scores the following year. And in order to do that, the same kids have to be in the school those 2 years. And so what happens, we had a little bit less volatility with our students from year to year. And so the number of kids who took that test twice exceeded the 20 threshold. That's why they're included in the report card this time around. This next slide here is one of the new data visualizations that the board has provided. It really gives you a lot of really information, I think, in a pretty clean way. Number one, you can see our overall index score, which is the actual metric that is used to figure out whether we are commendable or exemplary or where we fall. And then you can see where we fall, the weighted index score that the state calculates for each of the 8 metrics that create the summative designation for us. What do you see from there just right off the bat? You see that for 4 of those metrics, we have full weight, all right? ELA proficiency, math proficiency, science proficiency, and graduation rate. We have full weight for that, all right? And that's calculated in that 89.53. You see the other 4, we do not have full weight. 9th graders on track, English learners, chronic absenteeism, and climate survey, okay? And I'm going to talk about all of those a little bit more thoroughly as we go on. And I wanted to point out this next slide. I'm going to spend more time with slides with this kind of graphic in a little bit from the state report card, but this helps to show kind of where we fall in accordance with other school districts in the state. This is a distribution. All the school districts that are calculated into the high school, some of the designations are listed here. And roughly you can see that we are, the cut score was 91.24 to be exemplary. We were 89.53, just missing it. There's a little interesting little side note. We get this information from the state in early October, first, second week in October as school district administrators to initially review. The initial information we got was that we were exemplary. We thought, all right, good, 2 years in a row. But unfortunately, as the state cleaned up their data and other school districts kind of gave us feedback, gave the state feedback, because this is a relative mark, right? This isn't a cut score for the district. It's not a static number that you can always say. It's top 10%. So it depends where the other school districts fall. That affected us, and we were shifted in that way. But we're close, and our goal is to get exemplary. It's one of our goals, not the only goal, of course. But you can see where we fall here, okay? Roughly, as you can take a look at that on the bottom, the 2 kind of bar graphs, the far hand right of the table you see here, you can see that 9.9%, we're in the 90 to 94.9 range, 2.6 in the 95 to 100 range. So basically that puts us a little outside the top 13% of the state, okay? I'm gonna shift now, if I could, to the summary of findings, which is much later on in the report here. Again, I'm not going to go slide by slide through this. I'm happy to talk about any and all of them, but I want to highlight a few areas that we know we need to focus on. Again, our purpose for this report is really to highlight those things that we believe we need to do as a district to achieve that exemplary status, and then by achieving that, what might be left undone. You have on this slide here 6 bullets that really highlight this area of focus for us. All right. Number 1, our 9th grade on track data just simply is not where we want it to be. We definitely want our 9th grader on track data to improve. Number 2, English language learners need more support. We had brought that to the board just a little while ago. We plan to continue to do this in February and next August. It's a program that we're going to continue to focus on, of course. We need, this slide, more students and teachers need to complete the 5 essential survey. We did have a reasonable amount of students completing the survey. There wasn't a huge drop off from last year. I want to clarify on this slide, just to be inadvertently a little misleading. It is this percentage of students who take the 5 essentials that factors into the summative designation. The percentage of teachers that take it do not factor into that summative designation, okay? But we definitely want to improve that, and we will make sure we focus on that as we go forward. We targeted 2 years ago in this report to the board, the fact that chronic absenteeism was really one of those areas that we were really out of sync with other school districts like us. It's one of the areas where we were actually below the state average in that regard. We really focused on that with policies and practices here in the school, and we've seen improvements of that in every year since. But we don't want to we don't want to, put a banner up that says mission accomplished here. We have work to do with that, and we want to continue to focus on positive attendance for all of our students. And then, of course, the last two categories here, we're keenly aware that our achievement disparities continue to exist. And as a result, we need to make sure that we are focusing as much as we can on the balance between high expectations and support. And because a lot of our metrics point towards the importance of that freshman year, it's really in that area that we want to focus, but of course not only in that. I'll talk a little bit more about next steps in a little bit. What I want to do now is shift to the state report card here, and I'm going to stop sharing while I pull that slide up. Second here. And welcome our current and former students who have arrived at the boardroom. Good to see you. All right, I'm going to share this here in a second. Okay. All right, so this is our state report card here, and I'm gonna. What the board or the state board has added the ability for us to analyze how we compare to other school districts in the state in ways that we just simply did not have before. So this is the live version of that slide that I showed you previously. I'm going to focus on 3 of these metrics and just illustrate what we're able to look at to really highlight those areas where we need to focus on providing better support for our kids. And it really points to where some of these gaps really do exist. Let's start with 9th grade on track right here. Okay, I'm going to click on this metric here. And you immediately see this distribution, all right, of where we fall. This is the all students category, if you can see that well. These are all the students at OPRF and where they fall. You know, we are somewhere in this area. Our score is 64.3, somewhere a little over 30%, more than that of the schools outperform us in this area. Okay. But if you take a look at this, you can now disaggregate this slide by demographic group. Okay, so let's just take a look at this for a moment and see how different demographics in the school perform as far as 9th graders on track. How well are we supporting these students to be on track? All students, you can see where we fall. Okay, I'm going to go to our largest population of students. You can see where our white students fall. All right, shifts over to 82.24. All right, I'm going to go back up to low-income students here. And see where we fall. All the way to the left. This is a significant area of focus for us. I highlight this in the report that I shared with the board. We are a very well-resourced school district. This is an area that this report really helps us, or this visualization really helps us to understand is an area of focus for us. And we can do this across the board with all the demographics groups. You can see our Black students here, shifts a little bit to the right from what we saw previously, but not a ton. And we can go all the way through. We talked about EL students. A category that popped up here is former EL students, kids who have tested out. We're kind of in the middle bandwidth there, and so on and so forth. So I could keep going on this back and forth, but you can really see this 9th grader on track area is something that you really have to focus on. I talked about English language learners before, so now let me go to that in our summative designation. Is there an easy way to go back? We're just going to talk about them not in a separate metric here. Here we go. So let's go to English language learners and see where we fall there. You can see that our weighted index score is 1.8 out of 5% here. I'm going to click on this. And this is where overall our EL program falls. If you start to disaggregate this, the data starts to disappear because you have such a small number of students, right? You don't have your population that can be compared across the board. But you can see actually across the board, although we're a little bit further to the right, there aren't many school districts really who are really outperforming us as far as English language learners are concerned. But still, clearly, there's area for growth in that area. Okay. And because it has been a focus of conversations here with the board, I want to focus here a little bit on math as well. This is an area, and this helps to illustrate that while we have full weighted index scores overall for some of these areas, there's still significant growth and focus that we have to see. Take a look at math proficiency here. This is the all student population all the way on the right hand side. You can also see that's the highest bar, 18.4%. 18 of the school districts in the state fall in that 95 to 100 range. But now let's take a look now at our demographic groups. I'll just go straight down the list. Low income shifts a little bit to the right. Not what we saw with the 9th grade on track data, right? As big of a shift, but still a shift to that left. Our white students performing incredibly well as far as this metric is concerned. This is math performance on the SAT. And that is low income groups. Yeah, let's do both. Black students, right? Performing, I mean, better than most other school districts in the state as far as the Black demographic is concerned, but still certainly area to grow, and we know that's there. And we could just keep going through with our other population. So I could keep going. I don't mean to in any way, not focus on any population, but what I want to do is just illustrate how quick it is to see how OPRF compares to other school districts in the state. Something that I'm really happy that they have added here. One of the things that we've focused on as a school district to a large extent is how we compare to our own comparative districts. We don't have the ability yet in this visualization to choose different school districts, right? And so we can be a little bit more targeted in that comparison. But we do get a good sense of really where we fall. Okay, so there is that. I want to highlight a little bit on before I go to the next steps here on that previous slide. I'll leave it to you for now. I want to highlight what this data is and what it isn't. This is something I include in the report, but I think this is really important as we think about what our school is doing, what value are we adding to the students in the school district. Dr. Fiorenza, our coordinator of learning analytics, Kristen McKee, who's online here. We have been focusing for over a year, better part of 2 years really, on building and having data visualizations that really help us focus in on student growth, right? I mean, this is data that is static. It is a 1-point data in marking time. So, for example, when we're taking a look at graduation rates, and we're taking a look at 9th graders on track, every year we're going to see that. And we talk about this data like, well, 9th graders on track went up a little bit from last year. 9th graders on track went down a little. That's a true statement. But it doesn't talk to us about how students have grown themselves over time, right? Because it's a completely different cohort of kids that we're talking about. We really want to build models out that help us understand this. These kids came to us in 8th grade, right, with scores in these areas. How do we help them grow over time during their 4 years with us at OPRF? We will be bringing to the board in the spring using largely the PSAT data that we have, PSAT 8-9, PSAT 10, and the SAT data, information that's going to help us understand students really in 4 categories that we can then disaggregate and dive into a little bit more specifically. And we're looking at those students who came to us, hitting their benchmarks, and growing to and showing expected growth during time. All right, we'll define that in later presentations. We'll be able to come in and say, here's a population of students who came to us not performing on benchmark, yet are showing expected growth over time. And we'll be able to see students who came in, performing at benchmark but did not grow, and then students who did not perform at benchmark and did not grow. So we'll be able to take a look at that information, which will help us to really target those areas that we can focus on the school to get, to be as efficient as possible in providing the resources for our students. I think that's really where I think we need to focus on a school. This once in a year data set is incredibly valuable. We're happy to see it, but it's important to know that although we talk about it from shifts from year to year, that's really a cohort versus cohort comparison, not really a growth for our students. With that said, the last thing that I had in the PowerPoint here, and I can click back really quickly, we can take a look at that, is what's coming up in spring semester and throughout next school year as well. We've talked for a while about revising our strategic plan. And we will be bringing that to the board. Our target is February at this point. 9th grade and 10th grade curriculum shifts. We'll have some of this growth information perhaps in there. Depending on how that unfolds, we might actually tease that out for a separate report, right? So we'll giving some information out for both of those curricular shifts that we've been making here. College and career pathways. We've done that in previous years. We're bringing that back to the board. That's increasingly an area that the state is focused on. Of course, we always talk about behavior education plan and the outcomes that we see there. Every year we'll be bringing advanced placement as a separate presentation to the board, and of course instructional technology, which is a goal that the board has discussed us focusing on. And there may very well be others, but these are the ones that we know that calendar now. So with that said, I know that was kind of a quick overview, but it gives the kind of the breadth of what the report is. If you have questions, we're here and we'll be happy to respond to them. Fred?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. The first has to do with 9th graders on track. Okay, so as I understand it, the measure is students who have earned 5 credits. I assume that's first semester credits, or is that the entire?
Yeah, it's defined as the percentage of, I wanted to pull it up so we can see the language. The percentage of first-time 9th grade students who have earned at least 5 course credits without failing more than 0.5 course credits in core subjects. So it's specifically taking a look at those courses because that provides a nice comparison between.
So I'm asking if this is measured over the entire school year or just one semester.
Yeah, it's over the entire freshman.
Okay, so one of the questions I have now, we had a reduction from 90.8% to 88.1%. And I just did some rudimentary math, which seems to be about 20 to 25 students. And my question would be, is this an unintended consequence of our freshman honors curriculum? In that maybe there were 20 to 25 students that were placed in our normal now honors curriculum track that may have been should have been maybe in a different the transition track, or just just weren't prepared or weren't ready to work at that high level.
I think that and several other things are possible reasons for that decline of 25 students. It is possible that the challenge was exceptional for some students, and that a transition class may have been a better option. If you recall, student parents can opt out of our transition courses. And so if we do have parents that don't want their student to be in the transition class and have opted for the honors experience. So that's possible. It is possible.
My other question has to do with chronic absenteeism. And I mean, it's just when I'm reading, I mean, in reading the report, and I look at it and I see the disparity, especially with low income IEP, and when then we break it down by race with our Black students, is the question is why? Why are these students chronically absent? I mean, is there modeling behavior going on with our faculty or something? I don't know. Why is the student chronically absent like this? And have we sat down to determine, whether it's a survey or conversations with their counselors, or to determine what, is there a driving force? Is there something?
So I don't know how to answer that question in mass, right? For a group in any way, shape, or form. But I will tell you that part of what we put in place and why we see these numbers kind of, well, a big part of why we see these numbers shifting down for the past few years is because when students now hit a point where they are absolutely, they hit into our absence policy, right, our thresholds, we are now having individual conversations with those kids, calling families, getting into contracts, approaching it from a very individualized way. Part of what a multi-tiered systems of support, or really an RTI system tells us is that you're really taking a look at about 5% of your overall population that would be in tier 3, meaning that we really targeted support, and frankly, that's what we see here, right? A little bit more than that, but that's really where we're at. And so I don't know, if one targeted intervention or one explanation for why we see this would be possible. We'd be able probably to respond in a different way, but it's a very individualized situation for these students. And Linda Parker is online. I don't know, Linda, I just saw your face pop up there, so I don't know if you have anything you want to add to what I just said in that situation. Please feel free.
Just to add that there is no one single answer for each student. It is definitely a concern within the building with teachers, with deans, with just staff in terms of the students we see who may be in our building who are not necessarily in class, which is also adding to this as well. And some of that has to do with just engagement into the specific classes that they are in. But I can't say that across the group there's one specific answer. It is definitely a reason why the contracts were added this school year in order to dig deeper into why a student is missing and making them aware of what they would have to do to turn that around for the semester.
Thanks. Other questions?
Like Fred, I'm sort of focused on the freshman metric success metric. So if I'm understanding that right, it's kind of a crude metric. It's not looking at GPA. You can get all A's, but if you fail one class, then you fall in that category. You're not on track. Do you understand that right?
Yeah, you have to, you have earned at least, you could fail one class, you have to fail more than that, without failing more than 0.5 course credits. And so that is,
one semester. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one semester.
So in a couple of weeks, we're gonna know
feel for
freshmen who have failed one class, right?
Correct.
So do we now identify those individual students and actively support them second semester so they don't fail a second semester?
So part of the MTSS process is we have the early warning systems data. And so under, I believe it's Kristen's direction, and she's online too, so she can speak more to it. But that data is pulled, and then intervention supports are put in place for those students that fall into the category of needing. Is Kristen on?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Yeah, we run the early warning system data. First semester, we run it 3 times, and we do look at students with D's and F's. And then based on those D's and F's, we are putting in interventions in place for each student. We look at, of course, freshmen are the most, signify early warning. So we've looked at them 3 different times. And this is also a part of the work we're trying to do with some of the more responsive data in the dashboards is also building better dashboards. So our ease of analysis is better to see maybe where the F's are occurring. So sometimes I think we move to work with this individual students when really what we should be looking at is the system. So we meet with MTSS. The MTSS team is going to meet with the instructional coaches to kind of identify that and really understand it as a system as well as a student level.
Yes, a quick mechanical question here. How does course recovery when a kid takes a course recovery, does that get applied here, or is it this net of recovered courses, or?
So we don't, typically freshmen do not go through credit recovery, we want them in the class. We really reserve that for second semester sophomores, who are significantly deficient, but this is primarily for our juniors and our seniors.
The students that we identify with CSS, what is the communication to their families? How do we involve their families in sort of the crisis mode?
Go ahead, Kristen, do you have to say?
Sure. With the interventions, every time we add an intervention, there's a personal contact to the family. So we seek them to partner with us. Our interventionists send a letter to them explaining the intervention. We've started to implement a parent survey with a lot of our academic learning program interventions. And one of our goals has been family engagement. And some of that is how do we seek them to be our partner in the intervention, not just gaining their permission for the intervention.
Other questions? Marianne?
Sorry. Hey, so I mostly just want to say I'm really pleased to see that disaggregated data. I think that's really helpful. I guess I'm sort of surprised we haven't had access to that before, but it's great that we have it now. And then for the absenteeism issue, I just want to kind of remind the board that this is both excused and not excused absences that ISB counts. And I think
Thank you.
I think that's really important because I will say my own daughter came very close to hitting that because she was sick so much this fall, and she was just sick. They were excused absences, but she was sick a lot, and we still have, COVID is less life-threatening than it was, but COVID and flu and RSV are just very prevalent at the moment, and I'm guessing that a lot of kids have been out sick still. And so anyway, I just wanted to highlight it. ISB counts it as valid or not valid excuses still count towards it. So which makes me very frustrated. I wish they separated those two things, but
thank you so kindly for that designation, because this is some of the tug we have at the start of the year when we have a policy on excessive absences, and we kind of have a railing against why, and it's because it is part of a metric that we are measured on, and attendance matters, and instructional time matters, and being in the seat matters. So
right. So I mean, all of that matters, and but it also, like, when people have communicable diseases,
absolutely,
there's an issue with not spreading them and making more kids sick, so it's I just wanted to highlight that. That's all I have for.
Yeah, Mary, thank you. Again, I want to thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important. I don't want to belabor the point, but I do want to explain a little bit, because this is a situation where I think both truths are just real. So the reason why the state, it is frustrating that we have excused and unexcused in there for the reasons that you said, and we don't want kids to be coming to the school who are sick, and we don't want to incentivize that, beyond reason, of course, at attendance. On the same token, the state has set this mark because the research tells us that it doesn't matter why a student is in class. The fact is, if they don't have the seat time in class, it leads to negative outcomes for kids down the road, and they won't be likely to be on track to graduate. And so it's really reporting out that information to us. These kids who hit this threshold are less likely to graduate on time with their peers. And so the why is, what's important is you're not in the seat. And that's what it's sharing. So it does require some delicacy there.
Greg, I want to point out too that the way we're looking at the data, the way we're able to look at the data now that we fixed some codes and we deployed our Tableau strategy is that we're able to look at students by class period. So we're able to understand each class period and how many absences they have in a period. And that's something that our teachers have access to, our counselors, we all have access to now. But we're also looking, and you brought up, so the research. And so going by the research, understanding a rate of absence. So which is just your overall absence health. And so we do include that as well in the early warning system. And we are able to look at it in different ways now. So we're able to look at it by the way that ISB is counting the codes, but we're also able to look at it by how many times a student has missed at all. Because sometimes students are doing different things in our building and it contributes to their lack of being in class. And so we want to know all of that, right? And so that's something that we've really amped up this year, and we've just started having that ability to do it with our data tools. So we're pretty excited about the way we can look at that and respond.
Thank you. I have a number of things to just click through here. First of all, I do think this is the first time from a data presentation standpoint that, I think that the enhancements are great to be able to truly understand and drill in. I mean, the house that shows the, what makes up the state report card takes what has been a myth and makes it very factual. And frankly, allows you to then, go in and see, did the state misread our reports? Did, all kinds of things. We spent a lot of time talking about just having bad data. And it's a lot better to be talking about using data to drive action than having bad data. So the data is getting greater. Never satisfied. It would be good to, right? That's the what, but having it against our true peer districts would, is something that would be of value. Okay, because this, the statewide, I mean, to see a state that's at 4% tells you, the diversity and disparity that exists in the state. Okay, that's number one. Two is, I had asked a question, which I'll, I'm flipping to the 5 essentials, where there, I mean, it seems, our issue was just reporting, just doing it, right? So that one is something we can attend to, but I was rather intrigued by the responses I get. I followed this one for a decade now, and we've historically seen the same kind of data set, okay? With some improvement, but it has basically said that we score in terms of effective leadership and collaborative teachers. You look at the data and it's low. And my question was, how do we compare to our peer districts?
Yeah.
And because, I mean, this is just one set of data looking at ourselves, and I just want to make sure I read it properly, which is we actually are probably a little better than our peer districts. So is that a fair read on this? Well, or equal to?
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, so that means that as a general trend, everyone's saying we have ineffective leadership and uncollaborative teachers across the entire region. So I think looking at things that way, make us, that it gives me a different perspective of what's going on here. I don't know what the answer is, but it's just a different, it gives me a different perspective rather than just kind of hitting our own head against the wall. Is it something different?
I mean, these are areas that we are really focusing on, and it is frustrating year in, year out to not see this make these, these significant shifts, administrative leaders in this district, when you account for division heads and assistant principals and directors and superintendents, they've shifted significantly over the past, 6 years that you see here, much before that. And what we see is kind of this slow shift. And so I think that is true, but that doesn't underscore, so it's good to know that context, there's still a need here, and the 5 essentials data, the idea is that if you're successful in these areas, if you hit this threshold, then you're more likely to produce results for your kids. You're organized for improvement. You're organized to move your school forward. And we absolutely have this tells us that we have areas to focus on here. And I'll tell you, I think ambitious instruction and supportive environment are 2 areas that need attention in this category as well.
I think just quickly, just to kind of relate to that, I know that it was noted in the report that the participation rate was pretty low. Or was lower, I would say, than it had been, than it had been before. So I also wonder, in terms of who participated and who completed it, if that sometimes that can, I don't know what the numbers look like, relative to the.
Yeah, we can't disaggregate this data for like we can others to figure out exactly. We can't zero in really precisely on this, but you can see it's in the bottom right-hand side of the slide it's shown here. So, you know, last year, 79.5% of our students completed the survey, 86.2%. For the state average. That's why I highlighted that as an area we can focus on and really go after our kids. The teachers, don't affect our summer designation, but we also had a hiccup, and we usually do this at the faculty meeting when we have all the teachers in front of us. And last year, because data wasn't accessible because they couldn't log in. So that stopped us from doing it in the traditional way, and we just put it out to teachers and say, hey, you know, please get this done. And we kept sending reminders in the windows that we had to do it. But so there's areas to improve there. And so it's really hard to zero in on your question about it.
My next, I echo the discussion and the need to focus on the 9th grade graduation, 9th grade readiness. You know, as I hear this discussion and I reflect back on our last discussion on the freshman curriculum, I see, you know, pointing to the same thing in my mind, which is we did see a higher percentage of students were failing. And so that's where, you know, we know that's a long journey, but that's where this, you know, corrective action of what are we doing to address it, we can't let that one get too far behind us. We need to be diligent and understanding, and either, I think as we talked about, either providing the right supports and finding those students, or if those students really are not in the right place, putting them in the right place that fits what their skill is. So I see alignment, but the second question I have related to the 9th grade is one, Greg, I've asked of you, which is, we know as a district that, you know, we have the feeder districts that are 97 and 90, but we have students also, we know, coming into this community at the high school level. And do we have any data that looks at, you know, this from where these students are coming, right? And are they new to our community, new to our system? You know, one of the things we've talked about in the past is having new student supports or whatever it is, but I guess, are we looking at, you know, that's just another look of, you know, are they just coming here from a different state, place, etc., and from a preparedness standpoint might need additional support. So I would encourage we consider that as a look. My last 2 quick ones, maybe it's down to 1. You know, when we talk about attendance and that discussion, and we loop back to our discussion moments ago about the, you know, the changing demographics, the influx of migrants. I know from my daughter's experiences that there are students coming into the school who have not been in school for years. And so going to school every day is not a norm. And so I think there, you know, depending on that, there will be, that's changing demographics that have different you know, expectations and different pressures that we're gonna have to pay attention to. I think that covered all of, my notes, and I think that, you know, really the key is what are the, you know, the focus on the action. I do like the fact that you get to data that says, here's some area that we know, even if we're doing well, quote unquote, by the state standpoint, where we need to put action. So it's about data driving action, which is critical. So thank you. Yes, Fred?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the 5 essentials to
The previous one?
yeah,
This one.
yeah, this table.
Yeah.
Because what's concerning to me when we look at it is, if you look at 2017 and then 2023, and keep in mind, it's tough. The comparisons of 2021 and even 22 are a little tough because of the pandemic.
Agreed.
But going back to where we were as a district in 2017, to see an action, to see a decrease in collaborative teaching, supportive environment. I mean, look at the supports that we have. That we have created, you know, and that they're for some reason it's not recognized as a supportive environment. And it's not just supports for our students. I think we do much more supportive work for our faculty and staff as well.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the same with ambitious instruction to some degree, because we know, you know, that our faculty has gone through so much professional development and has embraced the things that we've asked them to embrace. And to see the differences in those numbers, I think is frustrating, or whether it may be inherent in the questions in the survey itself. I don't know.
It is. And from Kristen and I looking at that, because in this particular measure, when you drill into it, it was the safety category. And when you look at the questions, they are not necessarily the questions that we would pose if we were doing our own survey for it. Like some of it is, do you feel safe walking to and from school?
Which category are you talking about?
That is supportive environment. The area that went down the most was the category of safety. And when you drill into those questions could, like one of them is, do you feel safe walking to and from school? You know, so it's not necessarily just in the building. It's an overall holistic look at safety.
It's not as much of a climate as you think it would be.
Right.
At the risk of.
I think it's, can I just?
Oh, please go ahead.
I think it's the same thing in collaborative teachers. So one of the questions in collaborative teachers is that I collaborate with teachers outside of my district. Well, maybe not so much, right? We're not in a K-12 district. So the ease of collaborating with the middle school is much more complicated than it would be if I was in a K-12 district. So it's very hard, I think, to answer that question. I mean, how could you answer it positively? We do all of our PD internally. We don't really have the same types of opportunities to collaborate with our middle schools. Some districts, where I've worked at before, like they have county PD, and so you might go to that, but I don't know how much you go to that makes you then say when you're answering that, my gosh, yes, I collaborate a lot with people outside of my district. So some of the questions I would agree with Linda and Kristen do not lend themselves to our school. They are not questions I would ask if I'm asking about do we collaborate as a collective.
At the risk of thank you, and at the risk of improvising a little bit right now, I want to share something that we had just to go down to this data a little bit. I don't have this for all sorts of areas, but this is one area. So we're talking about collaborative teachers right now. I want to show it this. Show it here. we've done this for a different purpose as a district, but since I'm driving the machine, I can pull it up. This is a subset of collaborative teachers. It's not everything that goes in the collaborative teachers, it's a small part. And so this specifically focuses on collaborative practices, okay? And what are those? I've observed others. I've collectively analyzed data and planned with my peers in this school. And what you see is what we did here is we pulled in a decade view, right? What is happening at OPRF over 10 years, to get to your earlier question in this one area? The thick line on the top that's in yellow, all right, is OPRF. And the thin line is the state average, right? You can see that reflected there. And you can kind of see what's happening with this data. One of the things that we were really pleased with, and we didn't know how this would go, last year was the first year of this freshman curriculum. Well, what came with that? It was also the first year, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I might be. I think it's the first year we had TCTs. Was it the first year every single day? Was that last school year?
Every single Wednesday.
Every single Wednesday, not every day, every single Wednesday, thank you. That was a shift because we had it staggered prior to that. So what happened? What is the difference between last school year and the school years before? Well, we had new protocols for collaboration during the TCTs because we really needed that for the common curriculum that really came out of the freshman curriculum, and that had spillover effects into some other grades and how those TCTs functions. And the TCTs also happen, we're working every week. What happened as a result of that? Or presumptively as a follow-up on that. Well, we see this really nice shift in the extent to which teachers are saying they're engaging in these types of collaborative practices. That's really good to see. But as so that's just one example. If you really go down into the 5 essentials, you can really understand some nice trends. Linda was talking about safety. One of the things, I was looking for that earlier to pull that up. One of the things that we saw is that it's just amazing in some of these data points how our school follows the ebb and flow in the state. You wouldn't think that one school would be so effective, but if you take a look at one of the safety metrics, and I couldn't find it when I was going through here, but you could see that kind of the arc of this kind of 4-year graph that you see here is just parallel to what's going on at OPRF, the ebbs and flows over that time. So there are certainly state trends affect us to a large extent, but there are local things that when you really zero in, I think can be kind of teased out from the data. So anyway.
I just wanted to add well, first of all, what you just shared with us, does that have the participation rates for each year for student and teacher?
I didn't pull that into this. I'm sure we can get that. I didn't do it for this.
I mean, the glaring thing for me in looking at, so one of the things is we're covering it to some extent right now is the looking at supportive environment as a key indicator when looking at including demanding and supportive in that. Safety seems like it should be its own individual category because we know that the data says that if students don't feel safe, then the rest doesn't matter in some ways.
Yeah.
Like you can't even really get into the other stuff. So I think that merits pointing out that I think safety should be a standalone. But beyond that, I think that a huge topic of conversation needs to be how we can incentivize participation in this in the 5 essentials survey amongst students and teachers, because we should. I don't think we should be below the Illinois average for one, but I think we should be far above it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a major threat to validity and reliability of this data to only have 4 out of 5 students represented here. I think that's problematic to me. I'd like to see a much higher participation rate in the survey so that we can, without a doubt, say that this is representative. This is a representative sample of our community, and I'm not sure I can fully say that based on the participation.
Yeah, the need for that improvement is clear.
Yeah.
Okay. This is I will say the deeper dive, you just look at the numbers in a box that's an aggregation of a bunch of different questions. I'm appreciative that you're looking at it, on a question by question basis. You're looking at it over a 10-year window and trending. That's the kind of work that's gonna get you, where we need to be. It is appreciative to see that, really what is meant by it. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody else.
That covers the state, as we would say, the interseasonal state of the.
Yeah, we're in the winter.
We started in fall, we ended in winter. So with that said, our last segment is a quick, there's nothing in the information, so in terms of any reports on committees, let's just click through them. Marianne, iGov?
Sorry, I was not quite ready to present on that. Can you circle back around to me and I will have it more organized.
Community Finance Committee.
So we met on December 12th. And one of our lead topic was dashboards. We came out of our goal setting process, determined to create some dashboards for the status of the district. So one of those things was going to be financial metrics. So the meeting on the 12th with CFC was an opportunity to ask them for their input. And we brainstormed a few ideas, and I had actually presented a bit of a mock-up for that. But the takeaway is that CFC has now got a bit of homework where they're going to come up with some metrics that they think would be useful in terms of fiscal measurements. We then had a discussion of a levy, I think. And then what am I missing, Tom?
The financial model budget assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tony presented that.
So anything else? That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I can do iGov now. Sorry, my computer screen broke, so I'm on a borrowed computer until I get my computer back. So I don't have my written notes. But what we did was there was a discussion of a long logistical discussion about meeting time, which I could skip over. The village president gave us sorry, an update on the migrant situation, and I'm happy to fill people in if they have an interest in that. But where things are and where things are, it is a very rapidly changing situation. And we are working on the Community Mental Health Forum, but have realized that we didn't really allocate enough time to get that up and running. So it's been pushed a little further into the spring. And there are various iGov people who have taken up pieces of it and are supposed to be over these couple of weeks getting in touch with the township folks who specialize in this and using that as a jumping off point. There was some discussion about, is this a outward facing conversation where we are making sure that the community is aware of the resources that all the different governing bodies already have, or is this more of a survey kind of thing where we want to host conversations and sort of learn what we don't know about what the community is struggling with in terms of mental health at the moment. And I think that's actually not quite resolved yet. one of the reps from the library has put together a survey, and we're gonna try and figure out what we want this to look like. So that's where things are. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, one other note from an iGov, what it just for the board is that there was an ask that really all of the different government bodies try to get to the point where we have a common calendar, and that common calendar was referenced as the Chamber of Commerce, I believe, has one and maintains it, so it's an opportunity just so that, you know, all of our different board meetings and events can be visible in one place when people are trying to plan things. So that was just an ad from a part of it.
And that everyone kind of work to publicize that to the community so people know it exists.
Okay, CCB.
No December meeting, we'll resume in January.
Apple?
In December 5th, held a meeting, conversation really around how to share and get out the work that Apple does in terms of the scholarships that they provide, things around getting more connected and supported with the school and helping some of the parents that they work with, and quite a bit of conversation about students to transfer in our basically from transition, they're in transitional classes. And a concern that students tend to go in those classes and stay in those classes, and seeing as more remedial versus being able to transition into other kinds of classes. Dr. Theorens and Dr. Applewhite were there, and we were able to address a couple of some things that the school has in place and that's going on. I'd say my overall sense was that the group is looking to they're feeling a bit isolated. And I've shared this with Dr. Jonathan, we talked about this before, and how do they get things communicated, get things out, publicized, and then how they really truly help students, and how do they help the students and parents that feel left behind and feel like they're not as being as engaged, or don't feel like they have a place to turn for help.
Thank you. Sustainability, there was no meeting.
No,
Since we met.
no, there hasn't been. You're right.
Can I ask, did I get assigned to that? About a month or
I
two
don't
ago?
remember. We were wondering where you were.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
The last meeting was October 24th, according to your wonderful spreadsheet. I think I said it was sometime after that. Are you still the guy on that?
Yes. Okay. I'm still there. You were assigned, you were asked to go to Booster. That's, which is, and you're gonna be updating us in about 3 minutes, so get ready. Next, we have facilities.
No meeting.
River Forest. Community.
No December meeting, we next meet on the 24th of January.
Okay, Community Council.
Not December meeting.
Boosters. No December meeting.
Okay, so here's what I shared. I was at Magda Piper's house over the weekend.
All right.
Here we go. Executive vice.
Michael's house to the list here for next week.
Well, it was our block's annual cookie party, so you might actually want to go to that, because there was a lot of good stuff. And so what I shared with her is that we think we're only on call. Meaning, if they think they want a board member to show up, they will let us know, but otherwise, we're in standby mode. Magda seemed to get that, but
I think she does. I want to share one thing that I know the Booster Club is working on, because we're talking with Tony. Yes, this club is really interested in advertising, using advertising dollars and events to some extent to help fund the club and support all the, the donations and all the great work they're doing. So we're looking to stand that up. Nothing's completely set yet, but I think we're getting close to begin this work.
yeah, interesting you bring that up, because she brought that up. So if there's a proactive energy on behalf of the administration to do that, I think that would be greatly appreciated by the Booster crew.
Yeah, absolutely. We've benefited quite a bit because Tony had done that in a previous district. So, yes. Yes, there's movement there for sure.
And the last thing I'll say, and go back to the topic of sustainability committee. It is extremely tied into what I do professionally. So I would have an interest in.
You're
that.
on, you're on.
If for some reason,
You are-
you felt as though you had too much on your plate.
You are in. You're officially in.
Okay, but if that's true, then may I ask, Clerk Evans or Superintendent Johnson to put me on the communication list
Yes.
so that I can get a calendar invite or something.
Sure.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right, and with that, we're on applause.
Sorry, I think similarly, we are not attending their meetings and they will contact us is where things are.
Alumni and scholarship.
Next meeting is January.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Future agenda items. Okay. Are there any future agenda items?
Will we be meeting on the spring solstice?
There is no spring solstice.
There's an equinox.
There's an equinox.
Oh, yeah.
There's solstices in the winter and summer. And
Summer.
equinoxes. Okay. I'm gonna give a little celestial force for extra credit. And with that, I move to adjourn.
Whose email was that?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, we are adjourned. Thank you.